In the twilight hours of St. Petersburg's winter, the Imperial Guard stood like statues along the palace corridors. Their crimson uniforms and polished boots reflected in the marble floors, living ornaments in the grand theatre of Russian court life. Victoria Tarkova, lady-in-waiting to the Grand Duchess Olga, hurried past them with practiced indifference. At 22, Victoria had mastered the art of invisibility despite her striking appearance. Her dark hair, swept into a modest arrangement that complemented her high cheekbones and thoughtful grey eyes, was her only vanity. The daughter of a minor nobleman who had lost his fortune, Victoria's position at court was her family's tenuous connection to their former standing. The life of a lady-in-waiting was one of contradictions, constantly in the presence of power yet powerless herself, surrounded by luxury but possessing little, privy to intimate secrets while guarding her own. "Miss Tarkova," a voice called, startling her from her thoughts. She turned to find one of the palace guards, Lieutenant Nikolai Fedorov, standing at attention. His formality couldn't disguise the warmth in his eyes, a warmth that had begun to trouble her sleep. "Lieutenant," she acknowledged with a slight nod, her pulse quickening despite her efforts to remain composed. "The Grand Duchess asked me to deliver this," he said, extending a sealed letter. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, and Victoria withdrew her hand too quickly. Lieutenant Fedorov was handsome in the severe, disciplined manner of military men, broad shoulders, strong jaw, observant eyes. But it wasn't his looks that had caught her attention over the past months, it was the quiet intelligence in his gaze, the subtle kindness in his manner toward the palace staff. "Thank you," she said, tucking the letter into her sleeve. "I trust you're well." "As well as one can be during these uncertain times," he replied, his voice pitched low. The year was 1916, and the rumblings of discontent had reached even the insulated world of the Winter Palace. The war dragged on, and the Tsar's absence at the front left a vacuum that the Tsarina's peculiar governance failed to fill. "Indeed," Victoria replied, unsure whether to continue the conversation. Attachments at court were dangerous, especially for someone in her precarious position. Lieutenant Fedorov seemed about to say more but instead bowed slightly. "Good evening, Miss Tarkova." She watched him resume his post, straight-backed and stoic, before continuing toward the Grand Duchess's chambers, wondering what lurked beneath his disciplined exterior. The letter contained a mundane request for Victoria to prepare the Grand Duchess's ensemble for the upcoming Masquerade ball, the last extravagance before Lent. She sighed, knowing the event would only highlight the growing divide between the aristocracy and the suffering outside the palace walls. That night, as she brushed her hair before bed, Victoria reflected on Lieutenant Fedorov. There was something in the way he carried himself, an assurance that seemed beyond his station. Her roommate, Irina, another lady-in-waiting, noticed her distraction. "You're thinking of him again," Irina teased. "The handsome lieutenant." "I'm thinking of the ball," Victoria lied. "The Grand Duchess wants the sapphire kukoshnik, but I know that Tsarina favors it as well." Irina laughed. "Court politics are infinitely safer than matters of the heart." Victoria couldn't disagree. The following days brought increasing preparations for the masquerade, a tradition dating back to Peter the Great. Victoria's duties multiplied, and she often crossed paths with Lieutenant Fedorov, whose responsibilities included overseeing security arrangements for the event. During one such encounter, they found themselves momentarily alone in the portrait gallery. "Have you always been in the Imperial Guard, Lieutenant?" Victoria asked, curiosity overcoming propriety. He studied her face before answering. "No. I was educated abroad before joining the military." "That explains your accent, or rather, your lack of one when speaking French." A small smile played at his lips. "You've been listening closely, Miss Tarkova." She felt warmth rise to her cheeks. A lady-in-waiting must be observant. "And what have you observed about me?" The boldness of his question took her aback. "That you're different from the other guards. You notice things they miss." "Such as?" "Such as the way the Grand Duchess favors her right hand since her fall last month, though she tells everyone she's fully recovered. The way Minister Volkov always touches his watch chain when he's lying. The way—" She hesitated, "the way I look for you when I enter a room." The admission hung between them, dangerous and thrilling. "Perhaps we're both too observant for our own good," he said quietly. Before she could respond, footsteps echoed in the corridor. They stepped apart, resuming their respective roles as the Countess Vorontsova swept into the gallery. "Victoria! There you are. The Grand Duchess needs you immediately." With a curtsy to both the Countess and Lieutenant Fedorov, Victoria departed, her mind racing with questions about the man behind the uniform. 2 days before the ball, Victoria discovered a note tucked into a book she had left in the palace library, a volume of Pushkin's poetry she often revisited. "The masks we wear are sometimes of others' design. Meet me in the Winter Garden tonight at 11. The note bore no signature, but she recognized the precise handwriting from requisition forms Lieutenant Fedorov had completed for the Guard. Victoria spent the day in a state of distracted anticipation. Meeting a man alone at night was scandalous, potentially ruinous for a woman in her position. Yet the pull to uncover the mystery behind Nikolai Fedorov's enigmatic presence proved irresistible. The Winter Garden, a magnificent greenhouse within the palace complex, provided a tropical escape from the Russian winter. At night, illuminated only by strategically placed lanterns, it transformed into a shadowy jungle of exotic plants and whispered secrets. Victoria arrived 5 minutes past 11, her heart pounding so loudly she feared it would betray her presence. She had told Irina she was delivering a message for the Grand Duchess, the first direct lie she had ever told her friend. "You came." Lieutenant Fedorov emerged from behind a large palm, dressed not in his uniform but in simple civilian attire that somehow made him appear more formidable. "I shouldn't have," she answered, remaining by the entrance. "This is improper. In these times, propriety seems a luxury we can ill afford." He stepped closer, and in the warm glow of the lanterns, Victoria noticed details previously hidden by his uniform, a thin scar along his jawline, the elegant movement of his hands, the intensity of his gaze. "Who are you, really?" she asked. "I feel there's much you're concealing." "We all conceal, Miss Tarkova. You hide your intelligence behind deference, your strength behind protocol. That's different. It's expected of my position. As is discretion in mine." He gestured to a stone bench partially hidden by ferns. "Please, sit with me. Just for a moment." Against her better judgment, Victoria joined him. The humid air, heavy with the scent of orchids, wrapped around them like a cocoon. "I have something for you," he said, removing a small object from his pocket. It was a simple ivory hair comb, elegant but not ostentatious. "For the masquerade," he explained. "I noticed you've been helping the Grand Duchess with her costume but neglecting your own." Victoria accepted the gift, tracing its delicate carvings with her fingertip. "I don't understand why you would." "Because beneath all the titles and uniforms and court protocol, I see you, Victoria Tarkova. Not the lady-in-waiting, but the woman who reads Pushkin in the library when she should be resting, who sneaks bread to the kitchen boy's sister, who looks at paintings as if she could step inside them." His words pierced through layers of armor she hadn't realized she'd built around herself. "And I want you to see me," he continued, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Not just the lieutenant." "Then tell me who you are," she urged. A sound from the entrance made them both start. Nikolai quickly guided her behind a large ornamental screen as a palace servant passed through with gardening tools. When they were alone again, the spell had broken. "You should go first," Nikolai said. "It's safer." Victoria nodded, clutching the comb. "Thank you for the gift. Wear it at the masquerade." "I'll find you." She slipped away, her mind filled with contradictions, drawn to a man she barely knew, yet feeling as if she'd recognized something essential in him, something that resonated with her own hidden self. The night of the masquerade arrived with a flurry of excitement. The Winter Palace glowed with thousands of candles, their light multiplied by crystalline chandeliers and gilt mirrors. Musicians played in alcoves, servants circulated with champagne and delicacies, and the elite of Russian society twirled in a dizzying display of wealth and privilege. Victoria had helped the Grand Duchess into an elaborate costume representing Flora, goddess of spring, a defiant choice against the persistent Russian winter. Now, finally free for the evening, Victoria donned her own modest costume, a silver blue gown with a matching mask, her hair adorned with Lieutenant Fedorov's ivory comb. The Grand Duchess had noticed the comb earlier. "That's a lovely piece, Victoria. I don't recall seeing it before." It was my mother's, she had lied, feeling a pang of guilt. Now, moving through the crowded ballroom, Victoria searched for a crimson uniform among the kaleidoscope of costumes. The Imperial Guard remained on duty during such events, positioned strategically throughout the palace. After an hour of fruitless scanning, disappointment began to set in. Perhaps Nikolai had been assigned elsewhere, or perhaps he had simply changed his mind about seeking her out. A hand touched her elbow, and she turned to find a masked man in the elaborate costume of a Venetian nobleman, midnight blue velvet embroidered with silver threads, a half-mask that concealed the upper portion of his face. "May I have this dance?" he asked, his voice unmistakable despite his disguise. "Lieutenant Fedorov." Victoria whispered, stunned by his transformation. "How are you here? I thought you'd be on duty." "Tonight, I am simply Nikolai," he replied, leading her into a waltz. "And I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." He moved with unexpected grace, guiding her confidently through the turns. Victoria had danced before at court functions, but never like this, never with a partner who held her as if she were precious, who looked at her as if truly seeing her. "You dance remarkably well for a soldier," she observed, studying what she could see of his face beneath the mask. "I had an excellent instructor in my youth," he replied with a small smile. "One of many skills my father insisted upon." "Your father sounds demanding." "He was preparing me for responsibilities I didn't fully understand at the time." As they danced, Victoria became aware of subtle reactions from those around them, curious glances, whispered conversations behind fans. "People are watching us," she said uneasily. "Let them watch. Tonight is for masks and revelations." The dance ended, and Nikolai led her toward the terrace doors. "Walk with me," he suggested. "The gardens are illuminated for the occasion." Outside, the bitter cold had been temporarily vanquished by braziers placed along the paths, creating pockets of warmth amid ice sculptures and snow-draped topiaries. Their breath formed clouds in the night air. "You still haven't told me who you really are," Victoria said as they strolled between illuminated ice figures. "No, I haven't," he agreed. "Some truths are better demonstrated than spoken." They had wandered to a secluded corner of the garden when a palace aide approached, bowing deeply, more deeply than would be appropriate for a lieutenant. "Your Imperial Highness," the aide said breathlessly, "forgive the interruption, but your presence is requested inside. Your cousin, the Grand Duke Alexander, has arrived unexpectedly." Victoria froze, her mind struggling to process the aide's words. She turned to Nikolai, no, not Nikolai, with widening eyes. "Imperial Highness," she whispered. The man beside her removed his mask, revealing the face she had come to know, yet suddenly transformed by context. Lieutenant Nikolai Fedorov stood before her, but with the unmistakable bearing of royalty. "Grand Duke Nikolai Fedorov of Russia, at your service," he said with a formal bow that contained a hint of irony. Cousin to the Tsar, recently returned from an extended diplomatic mission abroad, and temporarily assigned to the Imperial Guard to assess palace security during these troubled times. Victoria felt as if the ground had dropped from beneath her feet. She sank into a deep curtsy, her mind racing with implications. Every conversation, every glance, every moment of growing affection, all now cast in a different light. "Please rise," he said gently. "Don't let my title erase what has grown between us." "What has grown between us was based on a falsehood," Victoria replied, struggling to keep her voice steady. "You let me believe you were a lieutenant when you are a Grand Duke." "I let you see me as a man first, before the title," he countered. "Something few have done since my birth." The aide cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Your Imperial Highness, the Grand Duke Alexander is most insistent. Tell my cousin I will join him shortly," Nikolai commanded, his tone brooking no argument. When they were alone again, Victoria struggled to reconcile the man she had come to care for with this revelation. Why the deception? Was it amusing to toy with a lady-in-waiting who didn't recognize her betters? Pain flashed across his face. Is that truly what you think of me? After our conversations, our moments together? I don't know what to think anymore. The distance between us exists only if we allow it, he interrupted. Victoria, my assignment to the Guard was genuine, if unusual. After years representing Russian interests abroad, I wanted to understand the realities of the palace, unfiltered by courtiers and sycophants. The Tsar himself approved the arrangement. And our meetings? Our conversations? Were they part of your assessment too? They were the unexpected gift that made everything else worthwhile. He stepped closer. Please try to understand. My life has been defined by my title. People either fear me, flatter me, or seek to use me. With you, for the first time, I was seen for myself. Victoria felt tears threatening and blinked them away. I must return inside. The Grand Duchess will be looking for me. Victoria, please, Your Imperial Highness. I need time. She hurried back toward the palace, her mind in turmoil. The ballroom, which had seemed magical earlier, now felt suffocating. She slipped through side corridors toward the ladies' retiring room, seeking a moment's privacy. Inside, she found Countess Vorontsova and two other ladies engaged in eager conversation. Absolutely scandalous, the Countess was saying. Grand Duke Nikolai dancing exclusively with a lady-in-waiting. After refusing every eligible match for years, to show such attention to a penniless nobody. Perhaps he merely pities her, suggested another lady. Or perhaps he seeks a different kind of arrangement, the third added with a knowing smirk. Men of his position often keep companions of lower birth. Victoria backed out silently, their cruel words burning in her ears, confirming her worst fears. What could a Grand Duke possibly want with her, if not as a temporary diversion? She found a small antechamber and sank onto a bench, removing her mask to wipe away tears that had finally escaped. The ivory comb felt heavy in her hair now, weighted with implications she hadn't considered. There you are, came a familiar voice. Irina stood in the doorway, concern evident on her face. I've been looking everywhere for you. Is it true? Were you dancing with the Grand Duke? Victoria nodded miserably. He was disguised as Lieutenant Fedorov of the Imperial Guard. I had no idea who he really was. Irina sat beside her. The whole ballroom is talking about it. Some say it's a romantic gesture, others say. She trailed off. That he's seeking a mistress. Victoria finished bitterly. Yes, I overheard that theory as well. What will you do? What can I do? Return to my duties and pretend none of this happened. Irina squeezed her hand. For what it's worth, I saw how he looked at you when you were dancing. That wasn't the look of a man seeking a dalliance. Before Victoria could respond, a court official appeared in the doorway. Miss Tarkova? Your presence is requested by His Imperial Highness, Grand Duke Nikolai Fedorov, in the blue drawing room. Irina's eyes widened. A formal audience. Victoria stood shakily. It seems so. You can't refuse a royal summons, Irina whispered. Go. I'll tell the Grand Duchess where you are if she asks. The blue drawing room, an intimate space used for smaller gatherings, was mercifully empty save for Nikolai himself, who stood by the window looking out at the illuminated gardens. He had changed into formal court attire, complete with medals and orders that proclaimed his status unequivocally. Victoria curtsied deeply at the threshold. Your Imperial Highness requested my presence. He turned, his expression softening at the sight of her. Please come in, Victoria. And please, when we're alone, I'm still Nikolai to you. I'm not sure that's appropriate, Your Imperial Highness. Formality is a poor substitute for honesty. He gestured to a chair. Please, sit. No one will disturb us. Victoria perched on the edge of the chair, her back rigid. I should congratulate you on your successful masquerade, sir. You played the role of lieutenant convincingly. It wasn't a role, he said quietly. It was freedom. Freedom to move through the world without the weight of expectations, to speak plainly, to be judged on my actions rather than my birth. A freedom those of us born without titles cannot afford, she countered. Victoria. He moved closer, kneeling before her chair, a Grand Duke on his knees before a lady in waiting. The sight was so incongruous that Victoria nearly gasped. I have made a mess of things, and for that I apologize. But I cannot apologize for getting to know you as I did, or for what I feel for you. And what is that, exactly? She asked, her voice barely audible. Something I never expected to find. Something worth far more than titles or protocol. He took her hand gently. When I return to my diplomatic duties, I want you with me, and not as a lady in waiting, but as my wife. Victoria pulled her hand away as if burned. Your wife? Impossible. The Tsar would never permit it. I have already spoken with my cousin about you. You discuss me with the Tsar of all Russia. Victoria felt faint at the thought. I told him I had found a woman of exceptional character and intelligence, whose perspective would be invaluable in diplomatic settings. He suggested I wait until after the war, but did not object to the match itself. The court will never accept me. You heard the whispers tonight, and that was just from one dance. The same whispers followed my mother when she married my father. She was merely a countess, he was a Grand Duke. They had 40 years of happiness together despite the gossip. Victoria stood and walked to the window, needing distance to think clearly. Even if what you say is possible, how can I trust you after such deception? Marriage requires trust above all else. Nikolai remained where he was, giving her the space she needed. You're right. Trust must be earned, and I have damaged yours. I ask only for the chance to rebuild it, properly this time. How would that even work? We barely know each other. We begin again, he suggested. Formally, properly, with everything in the open. Court permission for me to call on you, chaperoned meetings, correspondence, all the traditional steps. The idea was both laughable and touching, a Grand Duke following bourgeois courtship rituals. And if, after all that, I still say no, then I will have had the privilege of knowing you better, even if only to lose you in the end. He stood and approached her slowly. I'm offering you a choice, Victoria. A real choice, not an imperial command. She turned to face him fully. Why me? There are princesses and duchesses far more suitable. Because you saw me as the man, not the title. Because you challenge me and make me laugh. Because when I'm with you, the world makes more sense. He reached out to touch the ivory comb in her hair. Because you wear my simple gift even though you have access to the Grand Duchess's jewels. Victoria felt something shift inside her, a wall crumbling, a door opening. I would need time. An assurance that this isn't merely an infatuation that will fade once the novelty wears off. Time you shall have. As for assurance. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small leather case. This belonged to my mother. She asked me to give it only to the woman who saw beyond the Grand Duke to the man beneath. He opened the case to reveal a simple gold ring set with a pearl surrounded by tiny diamonds, elegant but not ostentatious. This isn't a proposal, he clarified. Not yet. It's a promise that my intentions are honorable and lasting. He closed the case and placed it in her hand. Keep this. When, if, you decide you can trust me, wear it, and I'll know your answer. Victoria clutched the case, overwhelmed by its significance. I don't know what to say. Say you'll consider it. Say you'll allow me to court you properly. Say whatever is in your heart, Victoria. Outside, the sounds of the continuing masquerade filtered through music, laughter, the rhythmic patterns of a society determined to dance while the world changed around them. Inside the blue drawing room, two people stood on the precipice of a different kind of change. I will consider it, Victoria finally said. Not because you're a Grand Duke, but despite it. Relief washed over Nikolai's face. That's all I ask. And I will continue my duties to the Grand Duchess while we explore this possibility. Of course. though I warn you, court gossip will be merciless. I've endured worse, she said with newfound confidence. Nikolai smiled, the same warm smile she had first noticed when he was merely Lieutenant Fedorov. May I escort you back to the ball? Or would you prefer to maintain some distance for now? Victoria thought for a moment, then made her decision. Escort me back. If I'm to consider a future that includes standing beside you, I might as well begin facing the whispers tonight. He offered his arm, and she took it, feeling both terrified and strangely at peace. Whatever happens, she said quietly, thank you for seeing me. Always, he promised as they walked toward the door. Masks off, eyes open, hearts honest. Together they returned to the glittering ballroom, where dancers continued their elegant patterns, unaware that amidst their revelry, two lives had irrevocably changed course, a Grand Duke who had found freedom in disguise, and a lady-in-waiting who discovered her own worth reflected in his eyes. As they entered, the music seemed to pause, conversations faltered, and all eyes turned toward them. Victoria felt the weight of 100 questioning gazes, but for once, she didn't shrink from attention. Instead, she stood taller, her hand steady on Nikolai's arm. The Grand Duchess Olga approached, curiosity evident beneath her polite smile. Cousin Nikolai, I see you've become acquainted with my most trusted lady-in-waiting. Indeed, cousin, Nikolai replied smoothly. Miss Tarkova has been kind enough to grant me the honor of her company this evening. The Grand Duchess's gaze shifted to Victoria, containing a mixture of surprise and something that might have been approval. Victoria has excellent judgment in most matters. I trust her discernment extends to her choice of companions as well. With that cryptic statement, the Grand Duchess moved on, effectively bestowing her tacit blessing on whatever was developing between them. The music resumed, and Nikolai turned to Victoria. Another dance? She smiled, feeling the weight of the ring case concealed in her gown's hidden pocket. I believe I would like that very much. As they joined the waltz, Victoria caught sight of their reflection in one of the ballroom's massive mirrors, a lady-in-waiting and a Grand Duke, moving in perfect harmony despite all that should have separated them. Behind them, the glittering court continued its eternal dance of power and pretense, but for this moment at least, two people had found something real amid the masquerade. What are you thinking? Nikolai asked as they turned through the figures of the dance. Victoria met his gaze directly, no longer hiding behind deference or protocol. That sometimes, the most surprising discoveries occur when masks fall away. He smiled, the expression reaching all the way to his eyes, the same eyes that had first caught her attention months ago, when he was just a palace guard and she was just a lady-in-waiting, before crowns and revelations changed everything and nothing at all. In that case, he replied, I look forward to a lifetime of discoveries with you, mask-free and eyes wide open. The dance continued, carrying them forward into a future neither could have imagined when the masquerade began, a future where titles mattered less than the truth they had found in each other's eyes.